Support for the Ag Tribes report comes from River.com, an online platform for buying Bitcoin in the United States. Use the affiliate link provided in the show notes to purchase Bitcoin directly from River to grow your Bitcoin investment and support the podcast. River.com. Invest in Bitcoin with confidence. And Legacy Interviews, a video service that captures people as they really are, so the future knows who they really were. Here's Legacy Interviews guest Phil Bender on how the experience allowed him time for personal reflection and an opportunity to honor his parents.
What was the experience like of being interviewed?
At this depth, very rewarding, very refreshing. You know, your sense of interest and the depth of the questions was really impressive. And you stayed present through the whole thing, because I pay attention to that kind of thing. You were walking with me through it. This is a keepsake for me, but also a great way to honor my parents. There are a couple things about my dad you drew out today that I don't know if I've said that to him. I think it's a moment in time to reflect, engage, deepen your perspective on what you've accomplished. I am reflecting on my version of what I saw, what I felt, how I responded to it. That is a legacy. That's valuable.
Welcome to the Ag Tribes Report, a breakdown of the top stories affecting the culture of agriculture, with your host, Vance Crowe. The report begins in 3, 2, 1. Let's begin.
Welcome to the Ag Tribes Report. I'm your host, Vance Crowe. Each week, I bring on a co-host that represents one of the many ag tribes that make up U.S. and Canadian agriculture. This week, the great John Kempf returns. John is a farmer from Northeast Ohio and founder of Advancing Eco Agriculture, a regenerative agronomy consulting company established in 2006. Driven by a mission to make regenerative agriculture mainstream by 2040, Kempf developed an innovative soil and plant management system after witnessing the failure of conventional pesticides on his own family's farm. Now, his company Advancing Eco Ag has launched his own AI agronomist, and that is an interesting thing for John to talk about. So, John, welcome to the show, and tell us, why'd you launch an AI agronomist?
Hi, Vance. Thanks for having me on. But I'm curious about why you use the adjective great to describe me. After all, Jesus said nothing is good. No one is good.
That's fair. I think I described you that way because I enjoy our conversations, and I would say, I don't know how adversarial you are, but I find that our ideas can clash, and it's definitely a good conversation. I walk away feeling refreshed after talking to you.
Yeah, likewise. There's this aspect of iron sharpening iron. If you don't disagree occasionally, then one person is doing most of the thinking or all the thinking. Yeah. Launching an AI has been interesting. It's kind of an interesting paradox, you know, having an Amish guy working on building and launching an AI. How does that work exactly?
I mean, that's the obvious first question right out of the gate. When did you start using AI enough that you thought, hey, I can pile information into here, and how'd you do it?
Well, I read some of Ray Kurzweil's work on the coming of the singularity, and so I've been paying attention to this field starting probably 15 or more years ago, and it was probably 10 years ago that I first outlined a vision that I had of what an AI agronomist could become and could be, and that was before the advent of large language models, before that technology had been developed, and so I had what I envisioned as an AI agronomist is something quite different from the way the meaning of AI today, the way that people generally understand it. But I first sketched out what an AI should look like in the winter of 2014. Actually, it was late 2013, spring of 2014. So this has been something I've been spending quite some time thinking about what it might look like. And you know, it really comes out of this. When we take an integrated approach to plant nutrition and to agronomy management, there are two pieces that make AI and large data sets particularly appropriate here, and that is this aspect of nonlinearity and just the multi-dimensional data, the multiple factors. So when you start looking at soil microbiome data, plant microbiome data, plant nutritional profiles, soil nutritional profiles, meteorological data, there are these hundreds or thousands of potential data points that the human mind just can't grasp. It's difficult to see all the patterns and see all the interactions. And so there's an obvious fit here for deep learning, statistical analysis, and for AI to make sense of large data sets. And of course, the quality of the data going into that is a large part of what makes that data set valuable, what makes an AI potentially valuable.
Well, I'm staggered by how far AI has come, and I'm excited that you've done something. We will take a much longer podcast sometime and sit down and really talk about what you did, how you did it, what engine you're using behind it. But I just thought, man, let's jump right into it and find out a little bit about your AI agronomist. But we got to head into the show. There is a lot going on, and on this week's episode, we're going to dive into the Trump administration's new Farm Security is National Security initiative. And we're going to talk about whether that's a genuine policy or just pure propaganda. We're also going to examine why the USDA opened and then immediately shut the border to Mexican cattle due to the New World screwworm. And we're going to explore other AI products that farmers are actually buying. You know, there's a lot of people out there saying, oh, the farmers have access to this, but what are they willing to pay for? And then if we have a little bit of time left over, we're going to talk about the cloud seeding and if it impacted the Texas flood. We're also going to explore the Bitcoin land price report with Bitcoin's brand new all-time highs. And we're going to hear John's newest Peter Thiel paradox and learn about another worthy adversary. And we're going to try and do that in just 30 minutes. So let's get started. The Trump administration launches Farm Security is National Security. Agricultural Secretary Brooke Rollins announced the Trump administration's new plan on July 8th, aimed at prohibiting future purchases of U.S. farmland by Chinese nationals and entities from other countries of concern. The initiative seeks to claw back existing foreign-held land where possible and safeguard the nation's food supply from potential adversarial influences. The announcement, made alongside Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, involves removing over 550 foreign-linked entities from the USDA system, enhancing monitoring near military bases, and promoting state-level bans on land sales to adversaries like China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, and Venezuela. Currently, Chinese investors hold approximately 277,000 acres, which is just 0.02% of all privately held U.S. agricultural land. And you can make a comparison here. Canada's foreign land ownership is 12.8 million acres. The Netherlands owns 4.9, and total foreign ownership overall is 45 million acres, or about 3.5% of privately owned land. The plan also targets Chinese-owned ag companies, Smithfield Foods and Syngenta, which are both owned by Chinese companies. And I think it is worth listening to just a few moments of what Brooke Rollins had to say about this project.
Chinese owning of farmland in our country is a massive national security issue. And for the media, you can see the yellow is where all of the farms have been purchased over the last number of years. And the red is around all of the military bases where that farmland has been purchased. So this is a massive national security issue.
Okay, John, what do you think? Is this propaganda? I mean, it's not like the Chinese just bought this yesterday. What's going on with their the U.S. government jumping in on this?
Well, there's a number of thoughts that come to mind, but if we just look at what happened in Iran during the recent Iran-Israeli conflict, one of the aspects of modern warfare has changed with the development of drone technology and AI. Now, all you need is a drone launching base. And when you consider land close to military bases as a possible drone launching base, then obviously the implications of that from a national security perspective become very important. But it's worth asking a whole bunch of questions around this. Why just land? Because you don't just require land. I mean, you can do this from a warehouse. You can do it from a larger building. There's lots of lots of considerations and things to think about there. But there's also, um, when you consider, Brooke used the phrase national security perspective, but what does national security actually mean? Is this from a worker perspective? Is it from a food security perspective? Because I would argue that from a food security perspective, we actually have much bigger concerns about the quantity and quality of food that we're importing from outside the country.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the perfect example would be when we started to have an egg shortage after they killed all the chickens. Then they started importing from South Korea and Turkey and from wherever else. And but to go back to your earlier point about the drones and being near military bases, I am completely comfortable with the U.S. government saying foreign entities can't own farmland and they certainly can't own them close to military bases. It just seems very precarious to me to make farm security and national security synonymous, which is the new mantra that came out just a couple of days ago. It makes me really uncomfortable because it feels like they're going to assert power in over farmland in a way that I don't think is good for people like you and me.
Well, why are we limiting it to farmland? Who cares about Chinese ownership of Smithfield, for example? I mean, you want to talk about a food security perspective. What about the significant processors and significant supply chain constraints? If you want to, if we're concerned that Chinese are going to exercise sovereignty over that in the event of a food shortage and export to the detriment of Americans, then let's have a conversation about much more than just land.
Yeah, and it's not just yeah. I mean, Syngenta is owned by ChemChina, and then you even look on a wider level. Of course, right now, companies or countries like Germany are our allies, but we have very little ownership of our packing houses or our seed companies. Which, if it really is national security, why did these deals get allowed to go through? Why were they allowed to sell a company like Monsanto to Bayer?
Yeah, the list goes on and on of, again, as you point out, if this really is considered a national security threat, which I'm in favor, or I'm in alignment with that. I can see that food security and the integrity of the supply chain should be considered a national security, from a national security perspective. I mean, what's the old rule of thumb? We're 3 square meals away from a revolution or something like that. So food security from a national security perspective is a framing that I can align with, that I can see why it would be framed that way. But then what does that mean exactly? Why is it being interpreted that way? Why now? And what is it that we expect to really do differently? And the bottom line question is, who does it benefit?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest question for me that comes out of all of this is not like should we or shouldn't we? It's why now? Like the push on this became so big. The propaganda that I was having in photos sent to me where the map of the United States was just covered in Chinese red flags with giant stars, and it was obvious that they were overhyping this. But why now? Is it to distract from something else? Is it to secure power? It feels very uncomfortable to me.
Yeah, and why this tactic? Why this approach? It's worth asking, what has this administration done that unique actions? There's been supposedly some things in the big beautiful bill that just passed, but what has this administration done truly to benefit farmers in a significant way? And if there's much, I haven't seen it.
No, but the super national FFA officer that is Brooke Rollins absolutely is out there talking and pumping up the system all the time. But for the most part, it seems like it's tilted towards the large industry groups and talking about what is going to happen as opposed to anything that's actually happened.
It was quite interesting. I had a conversation several weeks ago with a DC insider who's a part of the Maha Commission and putting the reports together. And he said something to me quite interesting when there were some conversations around the inclusion of glyphosate and GMOs in the first Maha Commission report, or they were being considered. I don't think they were actually included. And he said the agriculture lobby is 50 times more intense than the pharmaceutical lobby. It was the most intense lobbying pressure that he had ever experienced. What does that say?
Yeah, I mean, it's often been said that Bayer, who I used to work for, I worked for Monsanto, and then Bayer bought them. That one of the primary things that they bought when they were buying Monsanto was not for the seeds and the genetics; it was for the apparatus to be able to get things through the FDA, the USDA, and the whole lobbying system. And it's because the bureaucratic system is definitely tilted towards those who are willing to pay to play, I think. All right, we could stay on this all night, but we need to move on because New World screwworm both open and shut the border. Let's talk a little bit about what's going on. In a whiplash move, the USDA first reopened cattle imports from Mexico after screwworm concerns, and then just 2 short days later slammed them shut again. Secretary Rollins announced decisive action to shut down the southern border ports for livestock for trade due to this screwworm. So I'm posting up right now a map of just where that is right now. Reuters reports that the U.S. again halts the cattle imports from Mexico. The pest can devastate livestock by laying eggs and creating open wounds. The screwworm, as we've talked about on this show, was eradicated in the U.S. in 1966. And for a little while there, they were saying, hey, it's coming. We're going to shut down the border. Then they opened it back up. There's a lot of talk from people like Jared McDaniel online that what they were really trying to do was open it up so they could move through a bunch of cattle to get processed from Mexico and Central America. And then they shut it down really quickly because it's now less than 300 miles. It's 300 miles away from the border. So, John,
Do we have any evidence of cattle being moved through the border in that 2-day window in large numbers? Because if that's true, that's kind of a big deal.
yeah, well, so the anecdotal evidence on X was that a lot of people were saying how long the trucking lines were to get into the packing houses in Texas. But I mean, outside of that, I only have anecdotal conversations that were going on in X.
Yeah, the whole timing of that. I mean, I think closing the border is something that farmers and ranchers generally would all agree on was the right move and the right call. But why open it for 2 days? Why again? Just lots of questions of who does it benefit? We know who it doesn't benefit. It sure doesn't benefit the U.S. rancher.
Yeah, and this is a dangerous pest, and I think that anybody that's got cattle out on rangeland definitely doesn't want this in the system, and you definitely don't want these put into, if cattle are contaminated with this, putting them into our feedlot system would be just horrific. So the opening and closing just seemed stupid, stupid, stupid on behalf of the administration, because now if it comes to the U.S., it's going to be blamed, at least in part, on that open border.
You know, this is a slight shift of topic, but an aligned topic. But there's a quote that comes to mind. I forget who it's attributed to, but is there any other agency like the USDA who, over the course of its history, has counted its success as the decimation of its constituents? Like, who are the USDA constituents really? Are they farmers and ranchers and growers, or are they the agribusiness industry groups? And if it is the former, if it's farmers and ranchers, then that population has been decimated over the course of the last century or more, particularly in the last 20 or 30. Well, there's been this ongoing trend. And so this is not just a point about the most recent administration, but it appears that they count as success the decimation of their farming and growing constituents to a degree.
Well, I strongly believe that the decimation of this is a result of wild inflation. But to your point on the USDA, I don't know how much time you've spent in Washington, D.C., but when you see the building that the USDA is housed in, it is so staggering because it is blocks long. You start driving by this building and you just keep driving and you're like, oh, the building just keeps going. And you have to ask yourself, what are all these people doing in Washington, D.C. that you need all these USDA people? Who knows? But it doesn't seem like
And
they're helping farmers maintain.
and when you consider the environmental context, the environment of DC, the obvious question is that the best location to have someone or to have a group of people that is responsible for administering the Department of Ag? Who is it? Robert Cialdini. He's written several great books on framing, including the book Persuasion, but he describes how just the context, the environment that someone finds themselves in, and the context of a conversation rapidly changes how they show up and who they show up as. And so, if you really want to have people that are there to support agriculture, to support farmers, why are you having it in DC?
Absolutely. I mean, it's kind of a joke I always say is that we should move the USDA to Kearney, Nebraska, because it's at least an hour away from an airport. And so everybody that's there would only be there to work for the USDA. Whereas when it's in Washington, D.C., the USDA is just one place that a part of the bureaucratic system swings through. And it's controlled by people that want to be in Washington, D.C. They want to be a part of that hyper connected network of people in politics. And so if you really wanted to make the USDA more about farmers, you would put them in a far more decentralized place that didn't make it easy for people to come and go.
Well, you would put them in an area that is surrounded by a rural ag community, where the people who would work at the USDA would have some type of life connection to agricultural community.
All right, moving on. What AI products are farmers actually buying right now? You know, in anticipation of you coming on, I did a little research using Grok's new Model 4, which was incredibly powerful. If you haven't used that particular system just in the last day or so, I have been staggered by it. But the AI in agriculture market is projected to reach 4.7 billion by 2028. And farmers are, according to AI, directly purchasing AI integrated tools right now. Top purchases include autonomous machinery like John Deere's See and Spray system that uses computer vision to identify weeds and cut herbicide use by up to 90%. Farmers are buying these through dealers for around $200,000. FJD's AT2 auto steer system provides AI-powered GPS guidance for $5,000 to $10,000. And as for software, platforms like Farmanaut, which includes AI advisory services for crop strategies and satellite monitoring, small farmers start at $10 to $50 a month per acre. And Microsoft Farm Vibes is an AI offering soil mapping and yield forecasting. Of course, drones are in there with AI. And as I was going through this list and kind of seeing what AI was produced, I don't buy it. I don't think there's that many farmers paying directly for AI. But what's been your experience so far, John?
I haven't seen it either. And how much, I mean, where the places where I've seen, I don't think we can even accurately call it AI. There's deep learning and machine learning for photo identification of insects on laser weeders, or not insects, of weeds for laser weeders, for robotic weeders. There's image detection of disease and insects and pathogens and so forth. So there's some of that out there, but how much of it are growers actually paying for? I haven't seen very much.
Yeah, I mean, one of the most staggering podcasts I've ever put out was when I had Grok interview me for the podcast. And it was then that I got literally hundreds of phone calls, text messages, emails from people saying, I had no idea it was like this. And this was just a
Exactly.
few weeks ago. They didn't know it's there. And so, you know, maybe there's some people at the top of the large industrial scale that are buying John Deere systems, but I think almost nobody is using AI. I heard Jason Mock at his field day had been exposed to AI and started being like, oh, I can start asking it questions about my field and getting responses back. What's adoption been like for you?
Well, it's we're just approaching public launch this next week, so we've been in a private beta up to this point, just providing beta access to a limited number of people, and of that particular group, everyone. I mean, obviously, it's been by invitation or by people who expressed a desire and interest. So we've had virtually everyone that we offered access to has been in the system and playing around with it, which is under 1,000 people at this point, and just robustly testing everything out. But what is fascinating is the feedback and the responses. I've had I had one agronomist who's been a successful agronomist for 25 years say, John, this thing has solved more problems for me in the last 30 days than I've been able to solve in the last 10 years on my own. Like and he said verbatim, he said, I would pay $10,000 a month for this tool.
I mean, I believe it. When a system works with AI, it does solve problems. Like in my own office, all these tiny problems that you just don't know how to solve, right? How do you get that printer to network? How do you get this, supplier to get something back to you? Write an email for me about this problem we've been trying to figure out. It radically does that. So on a farm, what is it figuring out? What's your AI system working on?
Well, our AI system is focused and trained on all the things that are agronomy and plant and livestock agriculture related. So that it has a deep data set behind it that's focused and framed on that. And of course, it can also do other things above and beyond that, but that's the specialty that's really focused on. And so, you know, I'm fascinated by it. It can entertain questions at all levels, just like the scenario that you described, where you have these very entry level questions of how do I fix X? But then also, just this morning, I was having a conversation with one of the dairy clients that we work with here at AEA that we do consulting work for, and they're measuring the nutritional profile of their milk, and they're intending to make changes to the label claims of their nutritional profile because they have a nutritional profile that is markedly different from the USDA averages. It's significantly better. But there was this one characteristic, was CLA, conjugated linolenic acid, that didn't match the trend of everything else. Like everything else was elevated 40 to 60% above baseline averages, except this one marker. And all right, why? So I just asked our AI the question. Forget exactly how I framed the prompt, but what nutritional management factors could be correlated with lower levels of CLA in plants and in milk? And lo and behold, it gave me an answer of 4 different nutrients, the first one of them being selenium because of its association with glutathione peroxidase. And it described in detail the mechanisms by which these nutrients could influence lower levels of CLA. And guess what? Those 4 nutrients are nutrients that this farm's soil is systemically low in. So it nailed it right on the spot with no context, no information. And so there is, I think my assessment or my perspective is similar to yours, Vance, in that agriculture in general, farmers and growers and agronomists generally haven't yet really deeply leaned into even the mainstream AI models like ChatGPT and Gemini and Grok and so forth. And they don't really know what's out there, what capabilities it has, because when you start really digging into it, the capabilities are pretty impressive. And like you, I checked out Grok 4 today, and wow.
Stunning. It's absolutely stunning. Well, John, we will do a full-on podcast about this. I'll let you get your system out there up and running, and we'll do a full-on podcast about this because I got a lot of questions for you. But it is time for us. We're going to skip over the cloud seeding. The long and short answer is I had Grok 4 do some hardcore research on this, and they say even if the cloud seeding wanted to, all the timing was off. It was not the cause of those floods. No matter what way you feel about cloud seeding, whether it works or doesn't work, it does not appear that caused the flooding. All right, moving on
Vance,
to the
2 things.
Oh, go ahead,
Vance,
John.
2 things. I would be remiss. I haven't even mentioned the name of our AI. It's called Field Lark. So people can look that up. It's launching public this coming week. And on cloud seeding is not the only form of geoengineering. I asked Grok for a list of patents. How many patents are there that use some type of electromagnetic radiation for geoengineering? And the answer blew me away. I knew it was quite a few because I've personally read dozens. Grok 4 found 1,300.
And what does that tell you then, John?
Well, what it tells me is let's not get focused on just cloud seeding alone. That's kind of what everyone's aware of at the moment, but geoengineering is much bigger than cloud seeding.
And do you think there should be laws? Should we be trying to control or stop this?
Well, the fact that everyone, the military and the USDA bureaucracy apparatus is all hush hush conspiracy theory. This doesn't exist. This isn't real. When there are 1,300 patents for it, tells me that it's probably something that we need to be transparent about, need to work on revealing more of what is happening and what's going on rather than just sweeping it under the carpet. Because the moment they label something a conspiracy theory, it's worth going after.
To your point, the EPA came out just today saying, hey, we're going to release everything we know about chemtrails and anything going on with this sort of geoengineering. And my immediate thought is, well, the reason you're doing that is because you want to distract from the fact that you just came out and said there are no Epstein files. He didn't have any clients. And what we'd really rather you focus on is not this Epstein case, but the chemtrails. But to hear you, maybe there is something here to look at.
Well, it's not just ignore cloud seeding. Look at geoengineering from an electromagnetic perspective, and then you'll find where the heat is.
All right. I'm glad you stopped me and that we didn't just jump right through. So if you have stories that you think we should cover on the Ag Tribes Report, send them to me on X at Vance Crow or Vance at legacyinterviews.com. All right. Moving on to a very exciting topic this week, the Bitcoin land price report. Last November, which is when I had you on the show last, Bitcoin was $76,500. And today we are sitting at $116,000, a staggering 52% increase, as today is a new all-time high. So, John, have land prices changed that much since we spoke last?
No, not significantly. They're still in the 12 to 14, maybe high $15,000 range, but 14,000 is a safe number, which is where we were last November.
So what that means is that now Bitcoin would buy you 1 acre of land is worth 0.12 Bitcoin, or 1 Bitcoin would buy you 8.3 acres, whereas last year or at last November, it was just a little bit over 5 acres per Bitcoin. How does that sit? What's been your experience with Bitcoin since we last spoke, John?
Well, since we last spoke, I now own a little bit of Bitcoin, enough that I can say that I'm dabbling. But I feel like Bitcoin is an asset on your balance sheet, is really what it is, and it's in that aspect, it's has some of the same characteristics as gold would, for example, and I'm a little bit like Warren Buffett in my perspective on holding assets on a balance sheet, even on a personal balance sheet. I prefer to invest those assets in growing something, particularly because of my association with agriculture. So it's interesting. I'm certainly playing around with it. I'm intrigued by it. I think it has something it's worth people digging into and trying to understand well, because when you understand Bitcoin, you can't help but also learn a lot about monetary policy and the way that how dysfunctional it is.
I totally agree with that. I think just the very act of purchasing Bitcoin will make your brain have to understand things in a different way. I actually heard something this week that kind of struck me, that Bitcoin is a new thing to buy that normally you can't buy. It's buying a technology like as a whole. It'd be the equivalent of buying the internet in a way, because this technology is actually growing. It's spreading. It's becoming. It's changing philosophies. It's changing governments. So it is something more than just a single asset that's not doing something. It is more alive than that in some way.
But very abstract.
Yeah. All right. Well, we are going to keep moving on because we're running out of time, but we're going to turn now to the Peter Thiel paradox. So, John, what is something that you believe in that almost nobody in your ag tribe agrees with you on?
I've been thinking about that since our last conversation. I struggled to answer that a little bit then, and I'm fortunate enough to be surrounded by a lot of critical thinkers. We're constantly testing each other's thought processes, and so there are. I don't know how many there are. I certainly have many things that are very different from the mainstream. One is, I believe that pesticides actually create future insect and disease susceptibility in a significant way. And I mean future in terms of 5 days and in terms of 5 years. And I also believe that agriculture is the foundation of good public health. It's not alone the foundation of poor public health, because you can have poor public health as a result of, there's a number of contributing factors. There are environmental factors, there is processed food, there is stuff that's in our water. The list kind of goes on and on. But you can only have good public health optimize public health when you have a good food system, a healthy food system that's at the foundation of that. And just recently, the with the MAHA movement, Kennedy and Brooke Rollins have really been incentivizing and promoting removing sodas and sugary drinks from the SNAP program, specifically targeting, as I understand it, sugar in general, but high fructose corn syrup in particular. And since we're having a conversation in the agricultural context, it's not that far of a jump from no longer incentivizing and subsidizing sugary sodas to no longer subsidizing the source of the sugars that are in those sodas, i.e. corn syrup.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, I think there are a lot of people that feel strongly that we should not be making it as cheap as possible for people to eat sugar. I think where I would actually, my kind of latest Peter Thiel paradox is I think that sugar has been unduly maligned, and that that high fructose corn syrup is actually an innovation that is quite interesting. It's the fact that it allows so many more calories to be accessed for so cheaply. That's what's caused the problem. But I don't think high fructose corn syrup is in and of itself bad.
Yeah, you and I are not aligned on that one. That's where we need more time to have a conversation. But I'll just give you one data point, and there's many. But as I understand it, high fructose corn syrup will not give you a feeling of satiation. So you can eat large amounts and still feel hungry or not feel satiated. So you can just eat and eat and eat. Whereas other forms of sugar do contribute that feeling of satiation. You eat a little bit and you feel full.
So I actually had heard this and believed it for a very long time, and not that long ago tried some. I'm an N of 1, but I can only use my own experience on something like satiation, and I don't find that to be true at all. I find that if I eat an equivalent amount of honey versus high fructose corn syrup, the satiation is the same. And what really makes a big difference is, am I eating fats or protein around with them, and what hormones are being released in your body as a result of the other factors that you're adding in, not just your body's access to sugar. But what do I know? This is just my N of 1 experience.
Well, since you rebuffed that, I'll give you one more. And that is, I'm a passionate beekeeper. I have around 100 honeybee colonies. And the evidence is pretty clear. There's, where was this researcher from? I want to say University of South Carolina or Georgia or somewhere in the South. I forget right now. But there have been several studies on the health impacts of high fructose corn syrup versus sucrose on honeybees. And sucrose wins by a significant distance, not because of the fructose or the sugar form, as I understand it, but because HFCS contains, the name of the molecule is escaping me right now, but there's actually a contaminant that is a result of the manufacturing process that has a very detrimental effect on honeybee health. Now, we're not honeybees. It may not have the same metabolic health effects on us as it does on honeybees, but there's another red flag for me.
Yeah, I mean, when I first heard these ideas, it was by a guy that goes by Anabology. I've had him on the podcast. I thought he was ridiculous, and now I'm just glad I've encountered it, because I think I had a lot of received wisdom about this, but I still don't think the case is settled by any stretch.
Well, let's go one level further.
All right.
The FDA originally classified sugar as a drug, and there was intense lobbying activity to get sugar reevaluated and reassigned and assigned as a food instead of as a drug, because as a drug, there were very limited amounts that you could include in food products. And so if you go back in history, I forget the exact timeline around this. I want to say it's 30s, 40s, somewhere in there. There was quite an intense lobbying pressure to get sugar reclassified as a food instead of as a drug.
I am convinced by, or at least it makes sense to me, that you get cravings from sugar. But I think that we live in a world now that is so different than what we grew up with, or not what we grew up, what we evolved for. So it used to be the only time you could get access to carbohydrates would be in the middle of summertime. Carbohydrates were not easily accessible. And at that point in time, you were eating carbs, and that signaled to your body, hey, turn up the temperature, burn them as fast as you can, because what you really need is protein. But now, and then in the wintertime, you'd eat a lot more fats. And I think that when you have this combination of fats and sugars, it's doing something to our metabolism that is probably not great. But I think that we are maligning sugar when really it's a network effect that's more complicated than high fructose corn syrup is the enemy, and that the end result is that we're going after the wrong problems, at least in terms of human nutrition.
Well, I certainly can agree with the fact that we have a list of acceptable ingredients in our food supply here in North America that's 10,000 plus ingredients long, which is like 2 factors of magnitude greater than what is permissible in Europe. And that there isn't, if we get caught in just going after one ingredient or one group of ingredients like food dyes, we will miss many, many other things that are without question also having a detrimental effect in combination. It's not like one of these things alone is going to kill us, but the sheer exposure that we have in combinations that have never been studied and safety tested is something we should correct.
Yeah, I mean, and no doubt. And food preservatives, we're trying to make food last longer, and they're all studied in isolation because that's the only way you can do it. And really, our bodies, just like you were describing, the microbiome is a network, and it's signaling, and it's much more complicated. So I'm with you on that. Well, John, do you have a worthy adversary, somebody that you respect but you strongly disagree with?
Someone who I respect, who I strongly disagree with. I probably have lots of those people that I disagree with on different things on. Probably you, actually.
I will take that as a badge. Does anything come to mind in particular?
We've never really gotten into the whole conversation around GMOs and pesticides, and I don't know if we have the time, the bandwidth for that right now, but I think that'd be a pretty interesting conversation around how they influence microbiomes, how they influence health generally in soils and livestock and people.
Yeah, I would definitely have that conversation with you. On GMOs, I'm certainly a strong opinions loosely held. Like if somebody can show me something that demonstrates the danger, you and I have talked about like the Seralini research, and should we believe in it? Should we not? But I'm absolutely open to having that conversation and to hearing anything you have to say about it. If people know stuff about that I don't know, I'm very open to it.
Well, that's a very respectable position, Vance. I think we would live in a very different world if more people lived by Charlie Munger's advice, where he says you have no business. I actually think he says you have no right. You have no right to have an opinion unless you can articulate the opposing point of view better than the opposition. And if we lived by that more generally, we would have much more loosely held opinions in general as a society and as individuals.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I mean, the when you learn how to steelman another person's argument and like listen to what they're saying and be able to repeat it back for them, all of a sudden you realize like, oh man, there was nuance in what they were saying. They knew things I didn't know, but we just don't do that as a part of our culture.
Right.
Well, John, if people were interested to pursue more about the advancing eco agriculture AI system, you said it was Lark. Tell me a little bit more about it and where they could go to find out more.
You can find it on the advancingecoag.com website. You can also just do a search for Field Lark. It's just going to be called Field Lark AI. And actually, the inspiration for that name came from where is it? I think it's Job 12, verse 7 and 8. God is telling Job, he says, ask the earth and it will teach you. Ask the birds of the air and they will tell you. Ask the trees and they will show you how. I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but you get the essence of it. It's like, how can we embody more of that in the way that we show up in the world?
I love it. I'm really glad you're putting your ideas out there, and I'm looking forward to doing a much longer podcast where we can explore some of these ideas. Thank you so much for coming on, John.
Thanks, Vance. Have an awesome day.
All right, that's going to do it for the Ag Tribes Report. If you are interested in having me sit down with one of your loved ones to record their life stories so that future generations can know their family history, go to legacyinterviews.com to find out more. I just this last week did a fascinating family discussion where the adult children sat around a table, and I interviewed them about the stories that they remember and what made their family so great and what they wanted their parents to know that they were respected them about. I did a full interview with both of the grandparents, the mom, the dad, and then an interview with them together. And then all of their grandchildren sent us a video that we are now editing together to show the grandparents. So this entire family tree was something we were able to put together. We did the work over about a week. We did it all online. And if that sounds like something that you want to create for your family, an heirloom that will last for generations, then go to legacyinterviews.com and schedule a meeting with me. We can set something up that's really, truly beautiful. Also, with Bitcoin's price screaming to the roof, if you are interested in buying Bitcoin and want to support the show, I'm going to include a link in the show notes to river.com, who has kindly been an affiliate to the show. So we benefit when you buy from that site. That is where I buy my Bitcoin from. All right, that is going to do it for this week's Ag Tribes Report. I did do an interview on the future of agriculture with Tim Hammerich, all about Bitcoin. I have to say, those are some of the best questions I've ever gotten about Bitcoin. So tune in to Tim Hammerich's show. It's either going to be this week or next week, but check it out if you're interested in Bitcoin. It was quite an interesting experience. All right, we'll be back next week with another guest host. And until then, feel free to disagree.